welcome to a lecture on the introduction to period 5. I haven't really given it a name, but this is the Civil War period, and we're going to have a time frame from 1844, which is the election of an expansionistic president, James Polk. He defeated Henry Clay, and it was really an issue of expansion was the big issue during this election. And we'll end with 1877, which is when a period of time known as Reconstruction came to an end. And we've got there a nice picture of Abraham Lincoln. Now, in terms of periods, we can look at the United States in a different way of periodization, and we're going to break it down into 3 periods here. From George Washington to Abraham Lincoln, 75 years. Lincoln to Franklin Roosevelt, 75 years, and Roosevelt to Barack Obama, 75 years. And we see the 3 names there, shaping the nation, rise to power, world leader. And we can sort of see with Abraham Lincoln is sort of the end of this question of what kind of nation is it? Is it a collection of states, or is it a strong, unified nation? And the Civil War sort of answered that it's going to be emerging out of it as a modern nation state with a strong centralized government, an industrialized economy, and really the North winning is really industry conquering the cotton agricultural of the South. So it's just another way of looking at it. And, coming out of it, it's going to be a rise to power in the years after Lincoln. The United States is going to very much become much more global. And then after Roosevelt, it's the superpower era. So just another way to look at and consider periods in American history. All right, we got a thesis going forward for this period. Okay, I'll just read it out. Aggressive, controversial expansion of the United States territory exacerbated the nation's tensest and most divisive debate, the debate over slavery, by forcing the question of whether the new territories should be able to self-determine whether or not to allow slavery, highlighting the haziness around where states' rights ends and federal power begins, and accelerating the nation toward civil war, the course and aftermath of which transformed American society. Not written by me. I copied this straight up from a very well-written website called Wait But Why, which you might wish to check out as well. And Wait But Why is where I also got this. So credit where credit is due. Okay, the flow of period 5. This is similar to period 3. It's got very sort of concrete divisions, subdivisions of it. Unlike period 4, which is changes that are happening over periods of time, market reform, revolutions, the reform movements, changes to politics. But if we go to period 3, it's got that revolution, then the debate over the Constitution, then the first administration of Washington and Adams. Period 5 is sort of similar to that as well. It's got very sort of concrete, this, then this, then this, then this. So what do we have first? It's the expansion, and often going under the name Manifest Destiny, which we'll define later, but it's an extension of American exceptionalism, the city upon the hill, God's chosen people, the nationalism expression, and expansion. Texas, Oregon. Now, Oregon, we mean by this, what's today is the Northwest, Washington State, Oregon, Idaho territories as well, and war with Mexico and grabbing the lands there. Then comes the debate over the expansion of slavery into these territories. And again, they're going to try to compromise, and we're going to have what's known as the Great Compromise, and then the Kansas-Nebraska Act, which is also a compromise. But this compromise ultimately fails, and we're going to get the whole issue of slavery, which is going to tear the country apart, blow up the political parties, and bring an end to this Whig Democrat Party system. And it's going to lead to the election of Abraham Lincoln, and who was resolute that slavery cannot expand into these new territories, after which the South secedes state by state, and we've got the Civil War, which was epic in its scope. And following the Civil War, what's known as Reconstruction, which brings, the Civil War, it freed the slaves, it led to emancipation, abolition of slavery. That leads to a host of new questions about citizenship, helping the slaves, to readjust to freedom, and what does freedom mean? And this is Reconstruction, this era there, and it has ultimately, fails to fully address issues of racism, but we'll argue as well that it had a lot of successes, and we'll get to that, and that'll be sort of the end of period 5. Okay, so we're going to end this sort of introduction by looking at the expansion of the United States. We got here 1822, so well before a period of time. This is when the Missouri Compromise was enacted. We can notice that the large gray area in the south, New Spain, will become Mexico. And we look at our next one, we're going to go sort of not a full generation, but about 15 years later. And what's happened in Texas, which was a province of Mexico, which is now fully independent from Spain. And in Texas, many Americans had moved into Texas. They were invited in. The Mexicans wanted to populate this area. It's very sparsely populated. So they welcomed American settlers, sort of saying, you must convert to Catholicism, and you also cannot practice slavery, neither of which the Americans abided by. And there was disputes between these American immigrants into Texas and the Texan government, resulting in those American settlers, Tejanos, and there's very much a mix of cultures, Mexican, Southern American culture. They declared independence, and they became a country, the Republic of Texas. And it was disputed, where this new country, Texas, began, and with the Mexicans arguing this line here, a river, and the Texans arguing this line here, the Rio Grande, or the big river right there. Now, from Mexicans' point of view, though, Texas is not an independent country. It's a renegade province that should be brought back into the fold of Texas. From the Americans' point of view, there's a question, should we add them to our country, with Democrats saying yes and Whigs saying no. And this was a big issue in the election of 1844 between Polk and Henry Clay. And when Polk is elected, he's elected on a promise of up in this area here, he'll take it from the English. It's sort of jointly sort of claimed by both. He also says we'll take here California by whatever means. We can purchase it, or by force, whatever. California will become part of the United States, and we'll grab Texas. We'll annex Texas in as well. Now, when he's elected, and they annex Texas, they sort of annex Texas and say that this is the line, and that's going to be the one that's going to lead to the war. And after the war, they've grabbed the area from Mexico here, and they negotiated up here to just extend the 49th parallel there. And Polk is often cited as a president who, this is what I want to do, this is going to, and did it, and is often sort of cited as being a pretty good president in that part. I make the argument that he did what he promised to do, but what he promised to do was inherently wrong and nationalistic, and just as the thesis goes, it's going to lead to the Civil War. And final addition, you can see that last little bit down here, that's the Gadsden Purchase. They will purchase that area there. California quickly comes in as a new state, rapid population growth because of the gold rush, and we've got all this new territory, and what are we going to do about it? And we've got all these questions about whether or not slaves can expand into this territory, and it's going to lead to the Civil War. All right, that's where we're going to end this sort of little introduction. All of these things that we've just talked about already, we're going to cover those in a little bit more details in coming lectures. All right, thank you very much.